Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Mari. I'm one of the librarians at Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine, and I'm here today with another picture book biography for Women's History Month. Today we are reading about Charlotte Emma Edmonds. Charlotte Edmonds was someone who pretended to be a man, that's why it says she was a great pretender, in order to fight in the Civil War. This book is written by Carrie Jones and illustrated by Mark Oldroyd. It's called Sarah Emma Edmonds Was a Great Pretender, the True Story of a Civil War Spy. This book is published by Carolrhoda Books. Sarah Emma Edmonds was a great pretender. Sarah Emma Edmonds is a girl. She may look like a boy here, but she is only pretending. She started pretending really early. Back in the 1940s in Canada, girls were not allowed to do many things. Sarah was very sad that she wasn't a boy, and her father was too. Sarah's father had a horrible temper. He treated Sarah badly. She thought that if she were a boy, he might like her, so Sarah spent a lot of her time trying to pretend that she was a boy. Sarah was always a great pretender, and that's what would make her a good spy, although she wasn't a spy, not just yet. Eventually, she realized that her father would never be happy with a pretend boy. He'd always punish her for not being the real thing. So, sometime in the 1850s, when she was a teenager, Sarah ran away to the United States. She needed to make money to survive. She couldn't pretend to eat. She started selling Bibles door to door, traveling around the middle part of the country. It was unusual back then for a woman to travel by herself, and people weren't buying a lot of books, so Sarah pretended to be a man. She bought men's clothing and cut her hair. She called herself Frank Thompson, and she started selling a lot more Bibles. The Civil War began a few years after Sarah arrived in the United States. The war was fought between 11 southern slave states, the Confederacy, and the rest of the United States, the Union. The Confederacy wanted to leave the United States and form its own country. In 1861, while she was waiting for a train, Sarah heard a newspaper boy in the street yelling that the President of the United States needed 75,000 men to fight for the Union. Sarah wondered, what can I do? What part am I to act in this drama? Sarah hated the thought of not being involved in the war, of not helping. 10 days after the President's proclamation was issued, I was ready to start for Washington, she wrote years later. She enlisted in the Union Army. At first they rejected Frank Thompson, that is, because she was too small. She tried again. She must have seemed bigger that time. She pretended her way through a bunch of questions and became a private and a nurse, a male nurse, in the 2nd Volunteers of the United States Army. They were sent south towards the fighting. Being a nurse wasn't enough for Sarah, though. Her friend, James Vesey, had just been killed during a patrol. Sarah wanted to do more than heal her friends after they'd been hurt. She wanted to help prevent them from being hurt in the first place. A Union spy had recently been caught, and the Union needed someone else to spy. Sarah wanted the job. Maybe spying just seemed natural to Sarah after so many years of pretending to be something that she wasn't. Sarah was still pretending to be Frank when she volunteered, so she was Frank when she trained to be a spy. She studied maps and weapons and the personality of the Southern commanders. She put silver nitrate on her skin to make it darker. She wore a wig. Not even the doctor she was working with as a nurse recognized her. Her pretending was working. Then she took a new name, or rather, Frank Thompson took a new name. This time she became an African-American man, a slave. Her new name was Cuff. A chaplain's wife helped Sarah creep behind enemy lines. On the first day, Sarah helped other slaves build fortifications and ramparts. Her hands blistered, so she convinced another slave to swap jobs, and she worked in the kitchen. For 3 days, she counted guns and found out the plans of the Confederate Army and drew pictures for the Confederate defenses. She also learned pictures of the Confederate defenses. She also learned about the secret guns that weren't really guns at all. The Confederates had painted logs to look like cannons. It looked like Sarah wasn't the only one who knew how to pretend. Once Sarah snuck back to her camp, she told the Union Army everything she had found out while she was pretending to be Cuff. She told them about the Confederate Army and their plans and their pretend guns. The Union still lost the battle at Yorktown, but they didn't lose as many soldiers as they might have if Sarah, hadn't spied. 2 months later, she went back again. This time, she pretended to be Bridget O'Shea, a chubby Irish peddler. She was a woman, Sarah, pretending to be a man, Frank, pretending to be a woman, Bridget. It would be confusing for most people, but not for Sarah. She sold items to the Confederate soldiers and listened to try to find out details about their war plans. When she found out details, she would bring them back to the Union Army. This time Sarah's mission didn't go quite as smoothly. While dressed as Frank, she rushed off on a magnificent horse named Rebel. Rebel was cranky. Maybe he knew Sarah was pretending. He bit her arm when she dismounted to help a wounded soldier. Though terribly hurt, she eventually made it back to safety. Later, she stole another horse and rode through the battlefield to get back to the north. When asked about how she managed to do all this pretending, Sarah once said, "I am naturally fond of adventure, a little ambitious, and a good deal romantic, but patriotism was the true secret of all my success." Sarah went back to spy another time. This time she was an African-American laundress. She colored her face again and talked with a huge accent. While cleaning clothes, she found official papers in the coat pockets of an officer. She took the papers and hid in the cellar of an old house just as a battle began. Bullets hit the house from all directions, but somehow, huddled on the floor, Sarah survived. Perhaps she pretended that she was somewhere safe and warm, where there was no war and no need for pretending. All this time, people thought that she was spying for the people she was spying for thought that Sarah was a man. Frank Thompson was becoming a hero with a reputation for pluck, intelligence, and bravery. Then Sarah, became sick with malaria, a deadly disease. Even though she was terribly sick, she couldn't go to an army hospital because then they discovered she was a woman. Instead, she went to a private hospital in Illinois, planning to rejoin her unit as soon as she was well. She never did. The Army thought that her male identity, Private Frank Thompson, the amazing spy, had deserted. If she went back to the Army as Frank Thompson, she would have been arrested. It was against the law to leave the Army without permission. So she stayed as a woman and went back to working as a nurse, a female nurse. She pretended she never was Frank Thompson, never a spy, never rode a horse named Rebel, and never stole Confederate secrets. Sarah Emma Edmonds was a fantastic pretender. No one had a clue. And here's the author's note about Sarah Emma Edmonds. Some facts are known and some facts don't, but she was certainly not the only woman to pretend, but she did get the honor of joining a group of Civil War veterans. There's also a selected bibliography, and here's a picture of the real Sarah Edmonds. I hope you enjoyed this book and learned something about Sarah Emma Edmonds and her bravery. My name is Sarah Mari. I'm one of the librarians at Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.